Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the last day of our Salesforce admin training. And today we're going to be looking into flows. Flows are the future of Salesforce. If you're working with workflow right now, process builder, and you've mastered that, then the next stage is working with flows. Eventually, all workflow rules, process builder will be migrated to flows in subsequent, maybe whatever organization you're working with. Chances are the project would be migrating whatever they've done in workflow and workflow rules and process builder into flow. So today's class is very important for your career if you're going to be focusing on Salesforce, especially if you want to become a consultant. A few admins always get involved with flow as well, but this is mostly for consultants, okay? If you're an admin, most likely you'll be asked to edit a flow or maybe just investigate why a flow is not working. But as a consultant, definitely you need to know flow because flow is the future of Salesforce. So without wasting much time, I think we covered most of the things we needed to learn regarding workflow and process automation in our last class. So tonight is pretty much going to be flow and it's going to be hands-on. So there's not theoretical understanding of flow beside you just going into the org and start playing around with flow. Okay, so without wasting much time, let me go right into the trailhead and get started. So I'm just going to log into the hands-on org and I use my credentials. And I'm just going to go to my hands-on org, Salesforce revision. Okay, so before we start, let me just kind of like introduce flow, okay? So far, we've seen, last week, I discussed about 4 types of automations we have in Salesforce. The first one is the workflow. The workflow, which has the workflow rules that can do 4 things: send email alerts, do some field update, create tasks, and send outbound messages, okay? And we talk about process builder. And the process builder does the same thing as the workflow. However, it's somewhat much advanced compared to the workflow. The only thing the process builder cannot do is send outbound message compared to workflow, okay? So now there is even more complex automation too, which is a flow. And I believe I've had some of the mentors to walk you through how to use flow. So this is going to be more like a technical session, so please bear with me. You don't necessarily have to get it at first, but hopefully after watching the video, you should be able to have a very good understanding of flow. Okay, so let's go into flows. Flows are complex processes. They're not really complex processes. Don't get intimidated by complex processes or something like that. They are capable, okay, capable of performing complex process. So there's a difference between complex processes and a tool that is capable of performing complex process. What do I mean by that? For instance, if you're in your Salesforce org and you say, okay, when opportunity is created, I want a task to be created. Obviously, workflow can do that. You don't need to use flow for that. However, let's say after opportunity is created, I want a campaign to be created. I want an account to be created. I want something that is not even related to opportunities to be created. With workflow, you can only start with one object. So I would need to let you know the benefit of flow before I can go into flow, so you can appreciate flow as well as know when you should be using flow. Ideally, going forward, you should be using flow for most of your activities, right? Because that's what Salesforce recommends. However, let me just show you. Right now, we're in workflow. And whenever we want to carry out an automation, we have to select the object of interest. This object determines what we can do going forward. Do you get what I mean? Like, you're restricted to specifying that object at first. Similarly, if you're working with process builder, whatever you want to do with process builder, you're already kind of like restricted to where you get to start. Object. The object was selected at first before you can do anything. But with flow, you have that liberty of starting anywhere. You have the liberty of collecting data before you start. With workflow rules, you start based on the trigger that is being created. So you have like, okay, this opportunity was created or this opportunity was edited. That's the reason why the workflow trigger. With process builder, similarly, this object was, record was created on this object or record was deleted on this object. That's why the process builder triggered. With flow, you can collect information from the user. You can process that information even before you trigger anything, okay? So now let's go into flow. Flow can perform complex logics, okay? And when you talk about flow, you want to talk about screen flow or auto launch flow. There are two major types. By screen flow, it means that you want to collect information from the user. Auto launch flow, you want the flow to happen as a result of something. For instance, when a record is created, that's why you want the flow to happen. For screen flow, you want to collect information, process that information, and perform some logic based on that information. So let me give you an example. I click on new flow, and you have this screen. The first one, like I said, is the screen flow. The screen flow is like, I'm collecting information from user, and based on those information, I can either present it back to the user, or I can process that information and display the result back to the user. Auto launch, meaning that I can launch this flow without any interaction from the user. Typical example of auto launch flow would be when you're working in process builder. Remember, when you're working in process builder, let's say action, you specify flow. Can you see? You said when student email you check is not null or whatever you put there previously, you now specify flow. As you can see, flow is the action which you're specifying into the system, meaning that whenever I check the email and this condition matches what I'm looking for, then I trigger the flow. That means it is an auto launch flow. It is not a flow that is dependent on the action performed by the Salesforce user. On the other hand, the screen flow, which is something that you need to input, you need to collect data and process. So understand the differences between screen flow and auto launch flow. In addition, we have record trigger flow. The record trigger flow is when you create a record, or when you edit a record, or when you delete a record. That's record trigger, meaning that you have a record and you edit that record, or you've created a new record. It is called record trigger flow. That means a record was created or it was triggered as a result of records in the system. We have platform event. I think I explained this last time. Platform event is when something was received from an external system or from a different system. Salesforce is expecting a message from, let's say, MuleSoft. Then the platform trigger flow triggers as a result of that message. And obviously, schedule flow is when you want to run a batch process. When you want to, let's say, every month, every end of the month, you want to send reports to your manager. Every end of the month, you want to send reports to your manager. You can easily use a schedule flow to send that report. Every 30th of the month, I want to send reports to my manager. A schedule flow will be ideal. Okay, so know the types of flows we have. And based on the types of flow we have, we can start creating flow. So just don't create flow because you want to create flow. Find out what the trigger point is. So now let's create a very simple flow that would help us understand the screen flow. Then we'll go into maybe record trigger flow and the likes, okay? So now screen flow. What's a typical example of a screen flow? Why should we create a screen flow? What's the purpose? Screen flow is just, I want to find out where I am. Let's say I am here and I want to say, okay, because I am here and I know that I need a new contact for an opportunity. I can create a simple flow that would help me create a contact without actually going to the contact object. Can you see that there's no contact here? There's no contact here, right? But I can say, okay, I want to create a new contact without navigating away from this page. Typically we have to go to contact and we go to new contact. Can you see two processes in place? However, I can stay on this page. I can stay on this page. I can create a contact. And by doing so, I can continue with my transaction. I can carry on working on whatever I'm working on while I am creating a contact without moving pages. Okay, so that's one of the benefits of screen flow. You get information that you want to type in and you create that flow based on that. Okay, so we can let's create something very, very basic. I want to be able to say, okay, we're on the home page right now, right? And anytime a user logs in, I want to be able to say, welcome this user, welcome whatever it is. Today is 28th of February 2022. Just a very simple flow that tells me, welcome, whatever my name is, and today is 28th of February 2022. How do you do that? You go to flow and you click on elements. But before we even get to elements, before we even get to creating a screen flow, let me explain what this stuff means to you. So now, when you're creating a flow, as you can see, you have a screen flow and the starting point is this and the end point is this, meaning that the flow will go in a chronological order from the start to the end, and everything you put in between will be processed based on what you've computed. Right now, we haven't computed anything. So for you to compute something, you need to click on that plus arrow. Now that you've clicked on the plus arrow, you have options to add elements. What are elements in flow? Elements are just the components of a flow. They are the components of a flow. For instance, you have interaction. Interaction meaning you are communicating with the user, and you can carry out an action based on your communication. Communication is whenever the user click on something, I want to go somewhere. That's communication. That's what you get from the interaction menu. In addition to interaction menu, you can perform an action. What action can you perform? You can create a task. You can create case, account content, you can create an event. You can do a lot of things, including sending an email, which is very common. Okay, that's an action. After interaction, we have what they call logic. What's logic? Logic is basically getting data from interaction. Getting data from interaction, most likely the things you want or the things the user have entered. Then you process. Logic is like the brain. You process the information. For instance, I want to set whatever I've collected from the user. I want to set it as a variable. You use assignment. In web development, it is called maybe variable x equals 5. That means you have assigned x equal to 5. That's what it means. That's what assignment means here. Assignment means that whatever I have collected from the user, I am storing it as a variable. That means I have assigned whatever I have collected from that user into variable. Decision is I am checking what I have collected from the user. For instance, I was asked to send an email. If the opportunity stage is negotiation and review, I want to send an email. If it is not negotiation and review, I don't want to send an email. Or let's say if opportunity stage is value proposition, I want to send value proposition email. However, if opportunity is negotiation and review, I want to send negotiation and review email, specific email. So with flow, you have what they call decision. Decision is checking what the value of the stage is. Based on the value of the stage, you can send emails. That's what decision does. So you've seen decision, loop, collection sort, and collection filter is a bit advanced. over time you get to know them. But if you know about development, loop is just checking for something until it matches. You're looping through a particular variable to check whether this condition has been met. If this condition has been met, do this. Otherwise, do not do this. Okay, but don't let us go into this tree. It's a bit advanced, but you should be able to know assignment and decision. Okay, now we go to data. What is the data aspect of flow? The data aspect of flow is essentially the CRUD: create, read, edit, delete. For read, you call it get records. For create, you call it create record. What is create record? I want to find out the email of a user. When the email is xyz@abc.com, send an email. That is creating, or that is, sorry, I said send an email. I mean, create a record. That means I want to create a record for that email. Update a record. Get the ID of a record and update based on the information you are collecting. Now, I think I've spoken a little bit more than necessary for you to get started with flow, because flow requires practice. You need to actually get hands-on for you to understand what I'm saying. So now let's quickly just say something very simple. I want to display on the right-hand side here, welcome Babatope. Today's date is 28 February 2022. Very simple flow. How do you get to do that? The first thing is this: you click on the screen. The screen is not performing any logic. It is either collecting data or displaying data. It is not performing any logic. So for this flow, you want to just display message. I'll call it welcome screen, okay? Welcome screen, and the API would automatically appear. The most important thing about the API is that you cannot put space in between API, because space means something in Salesforce, not just Salesforce, but in the development world generally. Anything that has space, it means something. So you cannot say welcome screen with a space when you're writing API. And normally everything should be automatically populated, the API name most importantly. But if the API name is not automatically populated, make sure that it doesn't have a space. So you can either write it like this or you write it like this, okay? So now there is no space and we're good. Now we have this welcome screen, which is like a canvas. It's like a canvas to display whatever we want here. Canvas, okay? So now that we have the welcome screen, now what do we want to do? We want to display a test. As you can see, there's so many things we can use. If you want to collect address, you can drag address here. If you want to collect a date timestamp, you can drag it here. If you want to collect an email address, you can drag it here. If you want to look up a particular record, you can drag it here. But for now, let's keep it simple. I want to display a test. Display a test, okay? Now, it's asking you, what is the API name of this? Anything you do with flow is going to be asking you for API name. The reason why it's asking you for API name is it is storing whatever you're doing or the records you're collecting in that variable. That's the only way the flow can identify it for future usage, okay? So right now, the first thing we did was welcome screen. We've created that canvas whereby we can put our display test on, okay? And the next thing is the display test. It's not asking you for label, it's just asking you for the display test. So now I just put in display test, okay? Now that we have display test, I'm just gonna say, welcome user, okay? Welcome user. Today is 28 February 2022. Then I can maybe increase the size. Once I increase the size of this, okay, and I can say, that's it, done. You've created a simple flow that displays welcome user, today is 2028. When you create a flow, you save. Now you can save it as welcome message. Okay, welcome message. and you save. That's the end of the flow. If you want to test your flow, you click on debug. Debug is just to see how your flow works. So you haven't put the flow here, okay? But you want to test it to find out how it works. You click on debug. When you click on debug, debug will give you an idea of what the user will see in the front end. And you can see the user says, welcome user, today is 28th February 2022. As you can see, you don't need a finish for that. A finish is just a case of like telling the system that you're done. You know, flow has screens, steps, telling the system that you're done. If you don't want this finish, you go back to your flow and you edit the element that you just created. You click on edit and you go to the footer. The footer is where this is. You go to the footer and you take off show footer. If you put show footer there, it's going to show the button. If you take it off, it's gone. So it becomes a very simple flow. Again, anytime you make changes, run debug to see how your flow will look like in the front end, okay? Run debug to see how your flow will look like. But let me see, edit elements, configure footer, hide next, hide previous, hide post, okay? And if you have header, don't show header, okay? And you're done, okay? Debug. So when you have something like this, this finish stuff, sometimes you cannot take it within the debug. That's fine. But when you're displaying it, it's going to go away. Okay, just have that at the back of your mind that you can take off that screen, but when you're debugging, it might still be showing. But in the real flow itself, in the page itself, this front end is going to go away. Okay, so and with debug that, debug is just to show you that this is what the user will see. This is the most important thing, okay? The bug is saying this is the most important thing. Now, let's go to the front end. How do you bring this flow that you've just written, this stuff, how do you bring it to the front end? As you can see, everything in Salesforce is a page. This is the home page. When you go to a particular object, this is a list view. It's still a page, but it's a list view, right? It's not a page that you're used to, but is a view, is a list view. When you go to a particular record, this is also a page. So when you're creating a Lightning app, you have options, okay? You have options. One of the options is you have the home page, you have an app page, and you have a record page, okay? Without just being theoretical, let me show you. When you're creating a Lightning app builder, if you create new, which I believe everyone should know how to do by now, you have the app page, you have the home page, you have the record page. So everything is a page, right? So if you want to put your flow in this home page, yeah, you can create an home page and assign it to your application. You can assign that home page to your application. That means you're going to be overriding the default home page. However, if you don't want to override the default home page, you don't want to build your own custom home page, you can go to the gear and edit this page. Once you edit this page, you can now say, okay, this is the page that you want to put your flow. And all you just need to do is look for the components. You have standard components in Salesforce. These are what Salesforce provides you out of the box. You can create your own component as a developer, but obviously, when we get there, you will get to know how to create your component. But for standard components, you look for flow. Just like the same way we had dashboard on our home page, you can drag flow to your home page, just like this. Once you've dragged flow to your home page, then instead of you using the default flow Salesforce provides, you can now select the flow you've created. As you can see, the flow is not coming. And that means we have missed one step. And the step is to save the flow. We need to save the flow. Okay, now it says you can set either allow finish or allow back to false, but not both. Okay, So we have to edit this. And it says, we can set allow finish or, but not both, okay? So I can use standard, okay? Done, save. This issue don't prevent action, but can cause problem. The welcome screen is missing navigation. Okay, we don't want navigation. Like I said, it's asking you to select navigation. If you want to eliminate this error, all you just need to, it's not an error, it's a warning. If you want to eliminate that, all you just need to do is like have some navigation on this. Once you have navigation, and it's going to take off that error, but it's totally up to you. But then again, if you want to communicate with the user, you need to know why you're creating a flow. So now we say done and we save. Okay, so you need to understand why you're getting error, because that's the only way you can become a master of flow, by just looking at the error message and being able to debug that error. So let's go back to those error message again, so you can see what is directing my action. Okay, so previously we have this, and I click on done, I save, and you get this error. It says you can set either allow finish or allow back. As a user, you probably be wondering, what is allow finish? What is allow back? But remember, when I was editing this flow, I said, I don't want this, I don't want this. So it's telling you allow finish or allow back. You don't want both of them, it is impossible. That's why I had to go back and set this. And I also made this available, but you can hide this or you can use custom label, whatever you decide to do. Okay, that's the way I was able to debug that issue. But then again, if you've used the default template, you wouldn't have that issue. So I save. Okay, and now you're saying the other issue which I told you about, the welcome screen is missing navigation. That means the other error which I fixed it wasn't an error, it's just a warning. Okay, I display show footer. So this show footer is the flow. The flow is steps which I need to take in order to reach a finish line. Okay, so now I click on done, I click on save, and I go back to my I go back to my home page edit. I refresh this. Okay, I refresh this and I have flow. One thing we also need to do, but I will show you, I want us to make that mistake, then we can fix that mistake. Okay, so I have the flow, then I look for the flow. It's still not here. Why is it not here? There's another step which I told you we need to do in order to display that flow. And that step is going back to our flow. This is the flow. Once you've saved a flow, you need to do one more thing, and that's the activation of that flow. If you don't activate the flow will not be available. The flow will not be available. So once you've saved a flow, you activate a flow. Then you make it available for users to use. Okay, you make it available for users. In addition to this, if you've made now that you've activated this flow, if you've made any changes to this flow, you need to create a new version of this flow. Remember, in Process Builder, whenever we want to make changes to a new process, we have to clone that process, and it's going to give us either a version 2 or a new process. Same with flow. A new version or a new flow. Then we save. This is if you've made changes to the flow. Okay, so you activate. Now that we have a working flow, let's go back to our home page. Leave, just to refresh for you to click in. Then you go to edit page. Then you want to drag the flow in here. Okay, we have the flow and we drag it in here. Remember, flow is just a very simple welcome message that will tell the user welcome message. Okay, when you're editing the home page and you've made changes to the home page in Salesforce, you have to activate the home page. One thing about activating the home page is that you have the option to make the home page active for the org, so everyone will see the changes you're making, or you can specify an application that should have access to the changes, or a profile that should have access to the changes, okay? So it's very important you assign to either, obviously, the default org is fine. That means everyone will see the changes you've made, okay? Then you save. So now if we go back to the home page, we should be able to see the flow that says welcome user. But this doesn't tell us anything. This doesn't make any sense. It doesn't solve any problem. Okay, we have welcome user. So what we went through the whole time just to create a welcome user? No, there is more to flow than this. Flow helps you to create dynamic records. For instance, I can create dynamic record. Instead of saying welcome user, I can grab the username of the current user and say welcome Babatope, welcome John, welcome Mary. I can say that using a simple flow. Remember the purpose of flow. Flow is to create automation. So whatever automation you want to create, you should be able to use flow to achieve that. So now I just want to say, welcome Babatope, okay? Go back to the flow, save as, but before you save as, carry out the action. Carry out the action you want to do. I want to be able to say, welcome Babatope instead of welcome user. Then we're creating dynamic stuff, right? So I click on that display test and I say, instead of welcome user, I'm taking off user and I'm going to replace it by a resource. What is a resource in Flow? A resource is just a variable. It's just something you want to assign value to. So let me close here and tell you why you need a resource and how you can create a resource. A resource, new resource, is just something you need to display. For instance, I have welcome user, which is a test. So instead of constantly writing welcome user all the time, I want to be able to replace it with a username. But that username is a resource. It is a resource. A resource is like storing something for future usage when it comes to Flow. So now Flow is, I went to new resource and Salesforce is asking me, what is the type of resource you want? I want a variable. I want a constant. Constant is you have a static text. Constant is something that doesn't change. You have a static text. Formula, 2 times 2 equals 4. Instead of 2 times 2 coming from you manually writing it down, you want to get A times B, where A is 2, B is 2. It's still a resource. That's creating dynamic content. So for this purpose, we can just kind of like say, we want a variable. We declare the variable name, like just say username, and we say data type is test. And you can default value. What's the default value? Default value could be user. Then it's going to say welcome user. The same thing we had before. The same thing we had before. Welcome user, right? Okay, username. Now we go to this place and our user would now be our resource. Username, welcome username. Done. But obviously, when we were creating this username, we did not make sense out of that username, right? We only say welcome username, which obviously would always be user. But what if we say we want to grab the username from the system? I want to grab the username from the current user. So instead of me typing user like this, I can just look for user. Then I will say, I'm looking for the username. So the username is coming from the system. This username is coming from the system. Remember, in Salesforce, we have home, we have user. This user, okay, this is the user we're referencing, but when it comes to that resource, we are referencing the user that is currently logged in. Okay, it is currently logged in. So it's going to be grabbing the user that is currently logged in. In addition to that, I can create another resource. I want to grab what? a variable. I want to use a variable, and I'll call it organization name. Organization name. Okay. Remember, API, we don't put space. You can put underscore, or you can remove the space. Again, this is a technical session, so don't get overwhelmed with this. I just want you to understand what I am doing, because once you go over this video again, you appreciate flow. But let's go with the basics, okay? That means I'm creating a resource called variable, a resource type called variable. The API is organization name, and data type is test. What does organization mean? It means that if I go to my company information, I want to grab the organization name of this org. I want to grab it. And Flow is telling me that I can grab it if I want. I can grab the organization name by going to global variables. Global variables are the variables that exist in the system. Global variables are the variables that exist in the system. They come as a result of the Salesforce org, so you can easily access them. This is organization. If you want to go to profile. But remember, it is going to be referencing the current user, okay? So organization, I want to grab the name of the organization, the name. So as you can see, you don't need to type this out. You just need to click on organization and go and pick the name. Done. So now I have organization name. Edit this element again. Welcome user. I'll now say you work at the following organization. Then I want to insert the resource I created, organization name. This is the organization name, okay? Done. Then the last one, date. Today's date is 28. Now I want to get today's date. As you can see, anytime I'm done, I just click on done. I go back to new resource. I want to create maybe variable. I can call it today's date. Okay. Then data type would be date, or I can call it date time, depending. Okay. So depending, organization system flow. So you can get data type from system. System is like the current time that we have right now, the system, the computer. So don't get overwhelmed by where I'm getting this stuff from. What you just need to look out for is what is available for me in the global variable. The global variable are not the things you created. It's something that is available by default in the system. So now that you've created that, you click on done and you have it. Then you go to edit. You now bring it and replace this with the date, the new resource you've just created, today's date. Done. Then you save, because you've made changes to the flow that has already been activated. You have to save again. Once you save again, then you can activate. That is changes you made to the flow. Then you go, instead of welcome user, you're going to grab welcome username, organization name, and today's date, okay, or the origin date, whichever one it is. Can you see? It says welcome Babatope. This is the username. Okay, this is the username. This is the username. If you go to the settings of this guy, you will see that this is the username. So it is the current user that is grabbing. Then you say you work for Black Force Canada. Then it's grabbing this is not the current date. So we need to change this. Again, I want to make changes to this. I go to edit. No, I don't have to go to edit. I go to where I declared this stuff. Instead of system.origin dates, I'm going to take it off. I'm going to use something else, which is the flow. Then I say, I want to grab the current date time, because the flow is now. The current date time of this flow is the current date time that we have here. Okay, done. Then one thing I observe is that I was using the username, which is not what I want. I want the first name. Okay, I'll go back to my flow. edit that flow, then I will use the first name instead of the username. So what do I need to do? I don't even need to go to the flow. I go to where I declare the username. I change it to first name. So as you can see, the importance of having variable instead of working on editing the flow. You've already declared all this, okay? You don't touch it anymore. You go and change the variable, and the variable will be reflecting the changes. If you had not used variable, if you had entered all this in the element itself, you go to the flow to go and be changing it, to the welcome screen to be changing it. However, because you've used variable, you've made it easier to work with the changes without having to go and change it all the time. Right now, we're still using everything we've stated, but we've changed the definition of those things, and this is still working fine. But right now, because we've changed this flow, we have to save as. Anytime you make changes to a flow, you save as. For it to kick in, you have to activate. Okay, now that we've made changes, we activated, let's refresh this and see. Okay, so now we've gotten today's date, which is right. We've gotten Black Horse Canada, which is right, and we've gotten the first name. That is simple flow. Simple flow is just a welcome screen that is dynamic. Now, there is more to flow than just this. What can you do with flow? Flow is about the business case, the business use case. Let's imagine a case whereby we have a customer on the call, and the customer is asking for more information about Black Force. The customer wants more information about Black Force, and constantly we have to go to Gmail and send an email to whoever says they want more information about Black Force. But that's not a good process. That's not a good process. Let's use flow to determine what to do when we have an incoming calls and we have a support agent picking up that calls and they want more information. So now we want to create a very simple flow that does what? Send an email based on the information the user is requesting for. Again, we have to collect an information from the user. In this case, we want to collect an email. I'm using ScreenFlow because ScreenFlow seems logical, because I cannot use record trigger, I cannot use auto launch. Great. So now the question is, I want to collect an email from the user. I click on screen, and before that, I say user information. Okay, this is the user information screen. Automatically, this appears. Then I want to collect an email. So the email which I want to collect, just 1 minute, please. Yeah, I want to collect an email. And what is an email? An email is an email field. I look for the email prompt, email input, I drag it here. And API name, I need to specify user email. Okay, user email, and is asking me place order. Place order in development language is just what appears you at example.com, just giving them tips on what to see on the screen. Okay, that's what they call place order. Global display constant, meaning that do you want to make this active or inactive? Obviously, you want to make it active, so you set it as false. Okay, then do you want to make it read only field or not? Obviously, you want to collect an email, so you make it false. Okay, then value meaning that what kind of value, what value do you want to put here? Obviously, you don't want to specify the value outrightly. You want the customer to specify their email. Okay, now I click on not done. I want to add another field. I'll call it name field. This name field will just collect the first name and the last name of the customer. So this is the first name, last name of the customer. Again, you have to specify full name. Okay, and it says the same way, disabled. Do I want to make this field disabled? No, I don't want to make it disabled. That's why I wouldn't put true here. Fields to display. look at this field. I'm only collecting first name, last name. But do I want something more than first name, last name? For instance, do I want to collect middle name? Do I want to collect salutation? You can go to this and see what you can collect. So let's just say I want to add salutation to this. Okay, I've added salutation, and now I have salutation, first name, last name. In addition to that, do I want to specify the first name? Why would I want to specify the first name? No, I don't want to specify the first name. I just want the user to give me their first name. Do I want to specify the last name? No, I don't want to specify the last name. I want the user to give me the last name. Okay, so you don't specify this if you don't want to, but then again, you can specify this to be full name. This is just the label, okay? From name to full name, okay? Now, it says middle name. I don't want that. Read only, no. I want it to be something user can enter. Read only means that they will not be able to enter any input here, okay? So I click on done. So now I have collected information about a user, okay? I save. I call it user information. Remember, I want to collect user information, and I want to send them an email based on the information they are requesting from Blackforce, okay? I activate this flow so I can use it. Instead of adding to the welcome page, I can create a simple application from Lightning. Lightning app, remember how I got here? Lightning app, okay? Then I create a new app. Then I call it app page. Quick information flow, okay? Or page. Whenever a user wants to find out information, we use that page, okay? I select a region, which is this kind of region. Region meaning that I want a left-hand side, right-hand side. I want a full page. I want a 3-column. Whatever you want, you can display. Okay, finish. So now that I have a Lightning page, I can drag a flow in there. So now I'm working from scratch. Okay. I have user information flow that I just created. Save. Activate. And I'm activating for all users, okay? Save, finish. Now, this is a very simple page in Lightning, and what it does is, it's gonna ask for user information, okay? So I refresh this, and I open the Lightning page in quick information, okay? Quick information page, and it's just asking me a question. This is what a flow is. A flow makes it easier for you to collect inputs. Mr. Babatope Olajide, and the email is babatopeolajide@gmail.com. Okay, now I have collected this information. I click on finish, but because I did not do anything after the flow, finish means nothing. Finish means nothing. Remember, flow would run in a chronological order. When I collected user information, I did not do anything else. Okay, let's do something with those user information. I want to do what? I want to display those user information. I want to display it. Remember, we have this user information. I'm creating another screen flow to display this user information. Display the user information. I'm using a display test, and I'm going to say display user information. Remember, I'm making sure that I don't have a space in my API name. If you have space in your API name, it will fail. It will not save, sorry. So make sure that anytime you're writing API name, you don't have a space there. In addition, make sure that you put the right name in your API name, because you might need it for other things. You might need it for other things, okay? So I'm looking for the full name. I will display the first name, okay? I will display, I'm going inside the full name. Remember, I store all this, first name, last name, salutation, in a variable called full name. That is why I can query, I wouldn't call it query, but I can go inside my full name. Look at, I'm going inside full name and I'm looking for the value of last name and I put it there. Again, I go inside full name and I'm looking for salutation. That is it, right? So I put salutation at the top. Okay, then I want to grab the email. What did I save email as? User email, right? Click on user email. What is the value of user email? I grab it. Now I click on done. It says we have 2 errors, meaning that I did not put a label and API name here. So I'll just say display name cover. Okay, done. Okay, so now the first thing I did was username, user information, which is this. The next thing the flow says is display name cover. In actual fact, would it not be better to say display user information? You see, the names you give this thing matters a lot when it comes to flow, because you will have a lot of API name, and if you miss those things, you will struggle to figure them out. Okay, so now display user information. Display user information screen. Okay, so user information, you collect user information, display user information. Let's call this collect user information. Always be very descriptive. Always be descriptive, because that would save you. It will save you when you are troubleshooting your flow. Collect user information, display user information. Collect user information screen. I want to save this as a new version. Activate. Okay. Now I've activated this. I refresh this page. Now, if I collect user information, I go to next, it displays user information. I have collected the user information here, and when I go to next, it displays that information. If I want to make this fields required, I go back to my flow, I edit my flow. This for, I will go to not visibility, advanced. I want, because this is like it's not like an individual this thing display variable, is a collective stuff. So you can make certain full name, disabled false, field display, salutation, first name, last name, middle name, read only, false, because I don't want that. Component visibility, put a condition to it. I want component visibility has to do with if I don't want email to display, I want to check what the user has entered here before I can display email. So you can just put component visibility that will determine whether the email should display or not. For instance, I will say all conditions are met. I will say if full name equals Babatope, if full name equals Babatope, that's when, no, that doesn't make sense. So I'm going to email and I'm going to say if full name, component visibility determines whether email will show or not. Okay, and I'm going to say if full name, first name equals Babatope, then show this email session. If the first name is not Babatope, don't show this email session. That's what this stuff means. Okay, that's where you can do component visibility. But I'm looking for actually the required fields. I cannot see the, yeah, this is it, okay? This is required field, meaning that I want to make sure that first name and last name is always entered. Right now, if I click on next, nothing, and it doesn't stop me, which doesn't make sense. Then I have to say required is true. So what this means is that anytime a user does not enter first name and last name, it will not go through, okay? I made changes to the flow, I save a new version, then I activate the flow. Always save as, activate, then you refresh, okay? So now let's go to refresh again. It should show some red stuff there. So look at the email is not coming up, which is the expectation based on component visibility. But if I type this to be Babatope, the email appears. That is component visibility. Imagine how much logic you can put to now narrow down what appears and what does not appear. This stuff, if you put it as Jane, it will go because it is looking for where the first name equals Babatope. What is the use case for this? If you have a pick list that says, if let's say you're working on a case, if the case is from web, display web information. If the case is not from web, do not display web information. That's the very good use case of this. I've just used a very simple logic to hide email field or not, but you can create more advanced stuff. Okay, so now I have this and I go to next. Okay, obviously it just refreshes itself and it's come back to normal, but that's not what I'm looking for. Olajide, okay, then the value is required because I put a required field, okay, and okay, displays that. And now let's do an action, meaning that after getting this, I want to send an email to the user based on what they requested for. I'll go to, what do I need to use? Now I'm asking a question. I'm asking a question. What would you like to get from Blackforce? So it is going to be a question, right? It's going to be a question. And that question answer will determine the type of email I'm going to send. But before then, I need to have asked the question. So how do you ask question? You use a screen flow to ask a question. So you can say main question. So main question screen. Okay. Then you put in an input field. Inputs, and input should be test. Okay, you are asking a question. No, sorry. Yeah, it should be test. So it should be, what program are you interested in? What program are you interested in? Okay. But obviously, you have to be creative about this because whatever you put in the label will be the API name. But you don't want to always use what you put in the label as API name. You can make it shorter. Program of interest, okay? Program of interest. Then you say it's a required field. That means they must answer the program of interest, and that would now determine whether you can move on with their questionnaire or not, okay? So what we can do is we can actually let them display the type in the question, answer to the question, or you can use a pick list, okay? But let's say we want them to display the question, display the answer, answer to the question, okay? Done. So now we've asked them the main question, Now, what do we want to do? We want to make a logic. We want to make a logic that says, if the main question is this, do this. If the main question is not this, do this, okay? And where does that come into play? It comes into play in logic. Logic is when you are processing the inputs from the user. And you use what they call decision. Decision. check user answer. This is a decision. You want to make a decision based on the user answer. Okay, you want to make a decision based on the user answer. Actually, before I get here, I need to actually store that. I need to store this, right? I need to store the answer to this question, right? I ask a question, but I'm not storing the answer. Let me store the answer. What do I use? A new resource, variable, test, and it's going to be program of interest, right? Anyways, it doesn't really matter whether you store this because this is also carrying program of interest. So I just wanted you to know the use case of assignment. Assignment is I am storing the value of program of interest. But then again, Salesforce or Flow already gave us the answer, program of interest. So we can actually just say answer to program of interest. Salesforce always like us to use variable because you can now use variable in other places, because if you make it available for input, available for output, it becomes something you can use even outside of the flow. For instance, if you want to use process builder, you can now start using this because it's outside of the flow. Okay, done. So now I want to make a decision. Before I make a decision, I've already assigned the program of interest. Then I want to make a decision. What is the decision I'm making? Check program of interest. Okay, check program of interest is a decision I want to make. What kind of program? If business analyst, okay. If program of interest, okay, remember, if program of interest equals business analyst, I want to send business analyst information. Default outcome. What is default outcome? It is not business analyst. So it's negating if it is business analyst. Okay. Program of interest, business analyst. Default outcome, it is not business analyst. Done. So now it's giving us two parts. The first part is if it is business analyst, let's continue this flow like this. If it is not business analyst, let's continue this flow like this. As you can see, flow is so interesting. It's like as you're thinking, you're solving, and based on the outcome, you can process and solve again based on the outcome. Okay, so now I said if it's business analyst, I want to send business analyst welcome pack. If it is not business analyst, some business use case can be check another thing. But obviously, I don't want to complicate the whole process. I want to just keep it simple, BA or not. Okay, if it's not BA, what should I do? I want to do something. I want to send an email. Remember, action. Action is to send an email. Okay, I'll look for email, send email. Okay, so send email. And again, everything you do in Salesforce Flow, you have to give it API, whether you like it or not. The API is just used to identify what you're doing. Okay, the API is used to identify what you're doing. So don't worry too much about all these labels and API. It's just for you to identify in case you want to use it somewhere else. Okay, so let's just keep it simple. Send BA welcome email. And the API will automatically appear. Then the body. What is the body? When you send an email, the body of the email, the content of the email, that's what Salesforce is asking you. Then I want to create a new variable for this. Okay, new resource. Remember, everything is a resource. Resource, test template, BA email. Okay, and I'll just say, hello there, see below the BA welcome BA program details. But obviously, you needed to have prepared this in advance. Don't just kind of like create it out of the blue. You have to prepare it in advance. If you have any resource you want to enter, you can put it there. Okay, you can put it there, but sorry, this is not a match field. If you have any resource, maybe full name, yeah, full name is ideal. Instead of LO there, let's use LO for LO first name, CBA program details below. Then you can send BA program details below. Done. Now you want to subject. This is the information requested. Okay. Then you want to put an email. What is the email? The email is the email you collected. Remember, user email. You see the whole purpose of this labeling. The labeling, the API we're using in all places. This is where it comes into play. I could remember that I collected user email and I am looking for the user email and I enter the user email. This is the user email. This is what we store the user email as. Okay. This is the email. Okay. So that is what I am referencing here, the value of that user email. Then I can keep other if I want to do some formatting and everything, I can include the rich text, but I don't want all that. I click on done. Okay, so I said if the program of interest is business analyst, send BA welcome email. Otherwise, do not do anything. Do not send any email and end. That's the end of my flow. Save a new version because I just created the flow. Activate. Okay, I activate the flow. Then I go to my quick information. I refresh. Okay, then I enter the details. Okay, I click on next to display and I click on next, which is sending the email. Oh, sorry, asking for the program of interest, business analyst. Okay. Business analyst next, which is sending the email. But obviously, we did not see that because we ended the flow without even giving a confirmation that the email has been sent. But let me check my email to see what happens. Gmail, I'm sorry. This is the information requested. And it was sent, obviously, we needed to have formatted this stuff properly. But again, you can use proper templates in your email so you don't get all this. But the bottom line is, based on the information we provided here, we can get an email based on the information. Now, let's edit this flow. Okay, I just want to do something else. I want to remove the visibility because that visibility is blocking the email from displaying without. So I'm just going to delete this visibility. Okay, done. In addition to that, right now, I said check program of interest. What am I checking in program of interest? I'm checking if the person says they want business analysts, and that's why the email is sent. What about if the person says something else? If the person says something else, would that email go through or not? Let's see. We click on first name. As you can see, the email just shows without any restrictions. blackforcedemo@gmail.com. Then I click on next. Next, program of interest, engineering. But obviously, it could be anything. I click on next, and let's see, no email received. Okay, no email received because the condition was not met. This is decision. Decision checks the value you are expecting. If the value is not met, it will go to default outcome, and we haven't done anything. Okay, let's do a screen flow that says default outcome. Okay, the fourth outcome, message, okay? Display. So which is not BA, okay? Not business analyst. Again, please try to use the right naming, like API name, because it's very important. The API name would help you know what you're doing, but I'm just using this because I'm just going with the flow. Normally, you should have a BA, you should have a consultant, you should have a developer that will ensure that you're using the right naming convention and the right API name. Okay. So what do I want to say? This, we cannot send an email because you do not qualify for business analyst, or whatever you want to put. So this could just be a case of you checking a bunch of conditions to find out if they are qualified for business analyst or not. It could be a pretext question and answer, okay, like a survey. And you said, okay, when they send email, I want to display something that says success, email success, okay? Then I display a test that says email has been sent successfully. Email sent, okay? The email has been sent successfully. Okay, done. So as you can see, what I'm saying is this. I come here, I collect user information. I display the user information. I ask the main question. What program are you interested in? Based on the answer, I created a decision. If the answer is business analyst, go to send welcome BA, send BA welcome email and display email has been sent. Otherwise, do not send BA welcome email and display not BA selected. Okay, that's a simple flow I've just created using a decision. And I activate. So now you will see a bit of interaction in terms of whether the email gets sent or not. Okay. Okay, then you click on next. The information got displayed, which is the next action, right? The next one is display information. The next one is main question screen. Next, what program of interest? I want to do consultants. Okay, next, we cannot send an email because you do not qualify for business analyst. That is what I'm expecting based on what I have said here. You cannot because you do not qualify. You see, it's very simple once you know what business wants, once you know why you're doing it. Like, I did not even plan this flow. I just created it out of nowhere because I know that this is a typical flow for Black Force operations. Okay, and we can even run this based on automation, but that will be advanced stuff for you guys. Okay, so now that we have this simple flow, I'm going to take a pause here to find out if you guys understand the concept of flow before we now go into a very good use case that creates a record, updates a record, retrieve a record, and do all those kind of stuff. So please raise your hand up and ask me if you understand what I've said so far, even though I've been very basic, but I still want to know that you're with me, you understand this, and it's making sense to you, okay? So if you have any questions, raise your hand up and I'll be able to answer those questions for you according to how your hands have been raised. So, Ella, can you unmute yourself and speak, please?
Hi, Babatope. Good evening. So, I want to ask: is the program answer that part where it says business analyst? Is it case sensitive? Must it be typed exactly as you have indicated in this case flow, with the capital A, the capital B, or it can just be in small caps?
Yeah, that's a good question. So according to it depends on probably the settings of the flow, But I think it doesn't have to be case sensitive. It has to just be the value. And one thing you can also do is you can store it as a resource. So you don't have to type it manually like this. So you can just look it up. You just say new resource, value, expected value, expected answer. Okay, expected answer, test. And you can just say this is what you're expecting, okay? But then again, you can try it, but I don't think it has to be. Let's test it. I don't know. I don't think I've tried that. I've tried that scenario, but we can quickly test it just to see. Okay. So I'm just going to use small caps and test if it's case sensitive or not. But I don't think I've tried that before. So I've activated that. I've made the changes. Let's refresh this, and we're going to type all small caps. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to type business analyst. Okay.
Okay.
So it's sent.
Okay.
So my guess is
it's not case sensitive.
I cannot see the email. I cannot see the email. But it says email was sent.
Oh.
Let me use I hope I did not disable anything. Let me use the sorry, let me just check again. Okay, let me take that off and I'll put business analyst. Okay. Done. Okay, program of interest has to be business analyst. Activate. I'll refresh this because sometimes oh, sorry. Did I put black? I think I put my email, not Blackforce. I think I put my email, but let's see. I think I put my email. Okay.
Okay.
But now it's Blackforce demo. I think I put my email the last time. Okay. I'm using small caps, all true. Okay. It says email sent. Finish. Yeah, it's going. So I put my Gmail, my babatope.olajide@gmail. That's why it wasn't sending to my Blackforce. Okay. So it's case insensitive. You can use small letters or capital letter, doesn't matter. Okay.
Okay. So sorry, one more question. Is there another way to make that email field pop up, that's required field to pop up without saying Babatope? You know, you said you have to, like that, you know, that answer where it says you have to type Babatope before the email required field pops up.
Yes,
if you refresh the
condition visibility, condition visibility, what happens to that? So if it's not expecting, so the good example of conditional visibility is if it is you can do a pick list, right? Go to this go to collect user information, and you can put a pick list. Okay, put a pick list here.
Okay.
And from that pick list, you can check if email is needed. Okay. No, don't even let me check email. Okay. So I would say it's a test, okay, and it's required. That means user need to enter that. Then I will say pick list, okay. Then I'll put a choice, new choice resource, which is a pick list. Check email pick list, okay. And I don't want it to be from the objects, but I can use objects. Let's use opportunity objects. But this is not like a very good example, but obviously it's still an example. Pick list. Then I'll say stage name. Okay, done. Then from this, okay, I'll say the visibility of this email will be based on the value of check email here, which is a stage. Then I go to conditional visibility. I say all conditions must be met, which is check email pick list. And it has to be what kind of stuff is in opportunity when you have opportunity? Stage. Go to stage.
Amount.
Prospecting. Prospecting is a stage, but that's not the ideal example for this. So I want to say if it is prospecting, okay, check email pick list. If it's prospecting, then it's going to display email. If it is not, it wouldn't display email. Okay, that's the that's another way to just use a pick list to check something. Okay, so if I go to this quick information, refresh this properly. Okay, so as you can see, email is not displaying right now. It's going to go to checking the drop down pick list. If it is prospecting, it should prospecting. Did I type that right? Let me refresh. Let me look at the flow again. Collect information, edit, visibility of email, prospecting. Yeah, that's right. Equals prospecting. That's right. Activate. Yeah, that's fine with me. Refresh again. Not sure why it's not working. Let me use a very basic stuff. Apologies, I just needed to make sure that this is working right. So let me just take off components. Save your flow, refresh your program. I think there's an error somewhere. Could not replace position. Oh, okay. Got it. Choice. Let's just use choice. 3. Yes. Yes. Done. Okay. Then you have. Just give me 1 minute. I want to have as many choices. Yeah, this can, if you don't plan this can be very complicated. But one thing, this should just show by default. It shouldn't. It's strange that it's not showing, but it should show by default. I can let me see. I don't want to mess up the entire flow, but let me see. Let's use radio button, maybe. New choice. Just have choice. Test. Boolean, true or false. Just have test. So radio button is just when you have true or false, and that's it. Choice. Email. Make that. Okay. Then you have that. Then you can add a new choice, which is choice email 2. But then again, I have to create it. Okay, but you have to plan your flow, right? You just don't create it out of nowhere. Okay, it's very important. So we have 2 choices, whether it's yes or no. Okay, and that's yes or no. Then I can now set visibility of this based on this. Okay, email visibility. I want to delete this. I want to use this. Okay, and I want to say check email. Where's the check email? What's this check email? Check email API. Okay. Set visibility. Conditions are met. Check email. Okay. Check email pick list equals not that one. I want to check email. this is the important part of flow, right? You need to make sure that this is not pick list. This is radio button. What is the value of this? Check email, radio button, check email, radio button, choice email. Okay, this. Check email, choice email, check email. Is it choice email? Not choice email. It's not a pick list. Answer. Okay. 1 minute. Radio button is saved. Check email is the API name. Let's user select multiple options. No. Radio button, choice email. That's the first one. Choice email 2 is the second one. Then you want to set visibility for this. I'm looking for this, okay? So set component visibility, all conditions are met. Choice. Why is this not coming up? It's not a pick list. Can I just quickly get back to this? Let me just close this. Okay. Let's have it this way, but I can get back to this. I need to have a good example for this. Click on done. Okay. Now let me start afresh. I go to this. Okay. I want to use a condition of the input to determine the visibility of this. Okay. So I will go with let's start with any input field, which is test. Okay. Test. I will call it choice of email, so I can see it. Okay. Choice of email. Okay. And the value, I don't need a value there because I want the user to say, I want email sent or not. Okay. That's the choice of email. Now that I have the choice of email, I want the visibility of this to be controlled by the choice of email. Okay. So I go to visibility and I say always, then choice of email. Okay. This is a very basic example. Yes. So if the choice of email is yes, the email field should show. If it's not, the email field should not show. Okay. So choice of email. Yes. Okay. Then I click on done. So now the condition is there. Done. Okay. Save as. Save. Activate. So what that means is that a check email on this thing will come up here. Okay. Choice of email. If it is yes, the email will display. If it is not yes, the email will not display. Okay. But ideally, it should be something thoughtful. It should be something you plan. You don't just create conditions, but I just wanted to show you how the visibility works. Otherwise, you might have a requirement that says, do not collect first name or last name if salutation is misses. Obviously, that's not a good condition, but that's a possibility in terms of business scenario. So always think about that possibility. But I showed you how to determine that based on the input of choice. Okay. So does that answer your question, Ella, or you want further clarification?
Yeah, it answers. Thank you. Sorry for the
No. It's part of the learning. It's just that we did not plan that question, so I have to create it out of nowhere. Okay.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Inena, please.
Yeah. Hello. So, Babatope, I noticed that as you do save as on the flow, it keeps saving different versions of the flow rather. So yes. My question is, first of all, is it possible to revisit the previous versions of the flow? Like, is there somewhere you can go back and see what you've done before?
That's a good question. And if you can see, it's unlike workflow whereby you can delete and in the flow as well, you can see the version that is active, but I don't think it gives you that liberty to go. I think workflow process builder does that, right? But with flow, you just see that once you override, it just tells you the version which you are. And I'm pretty sure in some programs, you can actually go back to that version, but with Flow, I think it just overrides that. I don't think there is any, unless you save as, and if you save as, you have a new Flow, right? But it doesn't give you that liberty to go to previous versions. But I know in Process Builder, you can easily go to previous versions.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Matilda, please. Matilda, unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. When you debugged the first time, you had only one element on the flow. Can you debug with like end-to-end process?
So what do you mean debug? Once you run debug, if you're to create record or anything, it will show, right? So what do you mean? Like I have one element, now I have a lot of elements and stuff. So what happens?
So I'm thinking while debugging, everything you're doing on the front end to test, we can like do the same thing with the debugging. Is that how the debugging works?
Yeah, debugging just kind of like give you an idea of how your flow works, but you shouldn't debug in production. You should always debug in sandbox, because whatever you're doing right now will be creating a record. So let's say you're creating a record in the system, it will be creating that record in the system. You get what I mean? So the bug would send an email. For instance, if we want to send an email, the bug would send an email. So the bug will be giving you whatever action you're doing, and it's going to be telling you what the outcome is for that action. Can you see? Like it's telling you that in the full name, you have this, you have this, you have this, and in this, you have this. Then it's going to go to next. Whatever you're doing is going to give you based on the action you're carrying out now. And it's live. Like literally, if I have to enter business analyst, it's going to send an email to the person that specified the email in the input form. Do you get?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another question, please. There was a time you had this error of allow finish and allow back, and you said if we had used the default templates, that error wouldn't pop up. How do we use the default templates to prevent that error?
Oh, default template is when you just drag it. Like when when you're creating a new flow, like this, and you just drag it. You just drag that screen. This is the default. You haven't made any changes to it. But if you want to make changes to it, that's when you now go and configure. I don't want to this, I don't want that. Do you see? But if you don't want to make changes, then it's default. Default means to show. Okay.
Okay. Then when you're talking about the API name and how we should be mindful around naming it, does it allow duplicates? If no, does it allow duplicates like within all in the org or within a workflow?
The API needs to be unique across. So what that means is that you cannot use the same API name you use for this in another label. It has to be unique across your flow.
Okay. But if I have two flows, I can have maybe an API name, username in one flow and just repeat it in another flow, right? A different flow.
I don't think so. I think the API is unique across the org. Or you can try it, but I think the API name is unique across the org, because even in objects, right? If you have an object, it could be pertaining to the flow, because for object, you can have first name in this object and still have the same first name in another object. So we can quickly try it. That's not a problem. Let's I think it's something you can try though. Don't let us spend too much time on this. You can try that and see.
Yeah, that's okay.
When you're working on the flow, make sure the API is unique. Okay.
Okay, and my last question. I noticed you use variable a lot as your resource type. Like when you wanted to create the today's date. If you had used something else, is there any right or wrong selection?
No, I use variable because once the flow is live, right? You can, I think you can even change the variable without actually deactivating the flow. But if the variable is within the screen itself, then it's kind of like you have to deactivate the flow, make changes to the screen, save as, activate the flow, and the changes will kick in. But with variable, you can dynamically be changing what value the variable is without actually changing the flow. That's the benefit of using variable, because it's more of a programmer style of doing things than just doing things because, okay, I can create this stuff and stuff like that. No, you can actually store everything as variable and just be using variable within the screens, okay? Within the elements, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Abiola Oludele, please unmute yourself and speak. Abiola Oludele, unmute yourself.
Yeah. Actually, you have answered my question from Nina. She already asked the question I wanted to ask, but I still have the second question.